We have the extremely stacked UFC 320 fight card to jump into here, and you guys know I'm pumped up for this one. Topping the card off, we have two title bouts taking place as Alex Pereira gets an immediate rematch against Magomed Ankalaev after Big Ank just went out there and snagged his belt away from him about 6 months ago. In the co-main event, Merab Dvalishvili looks to build on his legacy as the greatest bantamweight fighter to have ever done it. And if he goes out there and defeats Corey Sandhagen, that would be a big feather in his cap, as Sandhagen is really one of the most dynamic fighters that we've ever seen in the division. Okay, so I mean that's a great fight there. Besides that, you have Yuri Prohaska taking on Khalil Roundtree. I believe Prohaska is the most entertaining fighter in the fight game right now, and if he goes out there and defeats Roundtree, that should be his ticket to fight for the belt next. Specifically, if Ankalaev defends against Pereira, that's where things get a little hairy, because if Pereira wins, you probably could expect to see a rematch of them facing off once again. We'll see a trilogy bout there. But if Ankalaev defends, it should be Prohaska taking him on next if he can go out there and defeat Roundtree, which that's not an easy task, okay? That's a great stylistic clash. You have the technical striking of Roundtree's versus the unorthodox and wildness of Prohaska. Besides all that, you have heavy hitters like Joe Pyfer and Josh Emmett throwing down on the main card, who both have tall tasks in front of them. The prelims are electrifying. Okay, you look at the talent that's on the prelims. You're talking Edmen, Shahbazyan. We get to see Ateba, Gautier step back inside the octagon. You could take a gander into Veronica Hardy's eyes. How about this? We get to see Patchy Mix look to rebound off of the horrific UFC debut that he just had. All right, that'll be fun to see how Patchy Mix looks in his sophomore fight inside the octagon. And I'll also mention we get to see Ju Sang Yu step back in there. I know it's very premature, but I really like what we've seen from him. Let's see if he can go out there and pull off another stylish Conor McGregor type KO. I mean, the prelims are stacked. I'm pumped up for this card. I hope you guys are as well. And we'll jump right into this thing. If you guys can, though, real quick, smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you guys have not already. I'll try to tone it down a little bit because I know I'm amped up here. I got my coffee going and I'm just ready to go. But if you guys could smash those buttons, it would mean the world to me. And of course, you guys know if you want to tail my official targets for this card, you guys can email me or shoot me a DM on Instagram while you go over and follow me on my social media. I'll give you further details there, but I got a couple different offers, including if you're looking to sign up to a new sports book, you can get my entire slate for free. So shoot me a message. I'll give you guys further details. This is a card you're not going to want to miss. I am going to have a huge slate for this card. We'll kick this thing off in the welterweight division as Soriano takes on Nikolay Veretennikov. And it's key that this fight's taking place at 174 Soriano. He had no business fighting up in the middleweight division, which is where he spent the bulk of his career. All right, he finally made the move to drop down in weight, and we've seen him reap the benefits as he's now 2-0 at 170 inside the octagon, which were his two most recent fights, and he looked amazing against Uros Medic. But when you think back to his early UFC fights, where he took multiple L's against fighters like Brendan Allen, Roman Kopylov, Dustin Stoltzfus, even Nick Maximov, not only was he physically outsized, but we would also see that it affected his cardio as he carried a little bit of excess weight. That mixed with his fighting style as well, as he would always go out there and look to take you out in the first round. And if he didn't do that, he was in trouble in the later rounds. Okay, he was very unreliable in rounds 2 and 3. You take a look at him now. I mentioned the Medic fight that he went out there and he knocked him out in just 31 seconds. That was outstanding. But actually, you could even say the Miguel Baeza fight was more impressive, okay, because we saw him push the pace for 3 rounds. That was a real proving spot for him, okay? And then you look back at some of these losses, like I said, I mean, I don't think that he should be losing to a fighter like Dustin Stoltzfus or specifically a Nick Maximov. That was the epitome of him fighting up at 185. And yeah, he was up there getting away with being undersized when he was fighting lower level fighters like Dalcha Lingambula and Dusko Trjovic and Oscar Pichota and Jamie Pickett. Okay, these are lower level fighters. That's why he got away with that. Okay, it wasn't going to work as he was climbing up the ladder. So he made the right move, and it'll be exciting to see if he could build on that recent success. This is a very winnable fight for him, as Veretennikov is a tough customer. He's a decently well-rounded fighter. His last name ends with that OV, but he's a striking-based fighter. I don't think that his grappling is really anything to rave about. So that kind of plays out well for Soriano, as I do expect that we'll see the bulk of this fight take place on the feet. where Veretennikov potentially could have some success. Not to completely overlook his striking, but I think that maybe he could try to test Soriano in the later rounds. Maybe we see Soriano have a setback there if Veretennikov makes this a grueling fight and he digs a little bit deeper. Because I do believe that Veretennikov has solid heart. He's a tough customer. But you take a look at the Vanderford fight, which was 2 ago. We saw him finished up via strikes for the second time. I think that Soriano is very live to finish him up in similar fashion. Okay, it could be down on the mat. It could be via ground and pound. Of course, on the feet, Soriano is very live to land a flush haymaker as well. I'm going to pick Soriano to win this fight via KO, but don't completely overlook Veretennikov, okay? Because I talk about the Vanderford fight where he was a little bit outmatched, but he showed heart in the Prado fight. That was a very controversial fight. Some people had him losing, but nevertheless, he was tough. He was in that one. The Danny Barlow fight, he showed that he has some skills. I know Danny Barlow just had a setback, so depending on how you want to look at that fight, that was a closely contested match, and he still did take an L there. Soriano should be a step ahead, and I will pick Soriano to finish this fight via strikes. Okay, and it's hard to say when it could take place because Soriano can go out there and shut his lights out in the first round, like we've seen him do multiple times, getting a first round KO, or with his developed and improved cardio, he could easily still have that power in the later rounds. And we've seen Veretennikov finished up in the later rounds. So, I mean, the knockout could come all throughout this fight. I'll play it a little safe and pick a second round KO for Soriano, but I do like him here. I'm not going to overlook the recent success that he has had. And we'll slide over to the odds where we see Soriano opened up right around a minus 225 favorite. And we have seen his line dropping a bit. We've seen a little bit of action come in on Veretennikov. I understand the mindset because this could be a fight that does play out closely. If Soriano doesn't land that KO, Veretennikov has shown some heart and some toughness and some striking abilities. And maybe he pushes Soriano late in this fight and we see a setback from Soriano's cardio. I just don't expect to see that. Okay, he is in his prime. He's 32 years old. Like I said, getting in that work over at Extreme Couture with Eric Nixick and all that, I think that he is the best version of himself in this fight. And I think that the best version of himself will be enough to finish Veretennikov. They call him Zombie Jr. after his fellow countryman, the Korean Zombie. But maybe we should start calling him the Korean McGregor. Talking Ju Sang-yu, who's taken on Willie Cat, Daniel Santos. This is such a treat. This is one of those hidden gems on the prelims. It's a striker's delight, okay, but it's actually still a stylistic clash. Santos, of course, has that typical shoot box type of striking. His elbows are tucked in. He's looking to march you down and land heavy damage on you. We can compare him to Charles Oliveira. That's a no-brainer, right? He's leading the pack over there. But I'll also compare him to like a Jose Aldo. And stick with me. There's a reason why I make that comparison here for fun, right? Because Ju Sang-yu, he does fight very similarly to a Conor McGregor. Okay, there's only a couple fighters that have that type of style. You could think of like a Mauricio Hufi as well. And if you look, you run the tape back on his last fight against Jeka Sergi. I mean, there was 2 moments in that fight that were eerily similar to when you're watching Conor McGregor, right? He kicks the fight off just as Conor McGregor kicked off the fight. I believe it was the first time he fought against Poirier, where he's throwing a spinning heel kick at you just to set things off. And then the perfectly timed counter hook knockout that was bringing flashbacks to when McGregor knocked out Aldo. Okay, so you have that stylistic clash here, the more light on your feet type of striking style compared to the more flat-footed, marching you down approach. It's going to be fun. You is a fighter that I'm pretty high on. I'm kind of buying in on the hype. I know that he's not that proven thus far. If you take a look at his resume, nothing's going to stand out to you. The lone UFC victory against Jeka Sergi, that's not going to say too much, even though it was in phenomenal fashion. Sergi is one of the more lower level fighters that we've ever seen fight inside the octagon. Okay, there's no question about that. But also note that Sergi, he was a very one-dimensional fighter, and he actually had some striking abilities. I mean, but he did march forward with his hands down. So take that one for what you will. Santos, on the other hand, I hear people talking about the fact that he's the more proven UFC fighter, right? He's more battle-tested inside the octagon. He's been inside the octagon now 4 times. He's 3-1. Okay, but let's take a look at the level of competition. I don't think it's really anything to rave about when you're talking Johnny Munoz and John Castaneda. You guys know I've never been that high on Castaneda. And don't forget, Castaneda hurt him very badly in that fight. Castaneda almost finished him, okay? If he's going to fight Similarly to what he did there against Castaneda, I could see him being finished here. Now, I will give him some credit because he did push through it, and then he came back and got his own finish, showing the heart, and he still has never been KO'd, but that still was alarming the way he took that early damage, and then he comes into this bout off of a victory over a fellow Korean fighter in Jiang Young Lee. I don't believe that Lee, even though he had a lot of early hype, I don't believe he's on the same level as a Yu. Time will tell how that plays out, but I think that Yu is the more promising up-and-coming fighter to represent Korea. I love the confidence that he brings inside the cage. You saw after he had that last victory, he says he's going to bring the gold belt back to Korea, and he's actually going to go over and hand it over to the Korean Zombie. That's a bold statement with just one victory inside the UFC, but I like the confidence. I really do. Okay, so the way I see this fight playing out, I think that we see this fight take place on the feet for the most part. I think both these fighters will be willing to engage in that type of affair, and I like the speed and overall striking abilities of you to not only potentially land that counter KO on an aggressive Willie Cat, but I think that he can outpoint Santos, right? Santos has proven to be tough, and he has 9 victories. Only 3 of them come by way of KO. So it's not like he's this big time knockout artist. Okay, don't let that UFC debut performance make you think that he's going out there and just steamrolling everybody, because he's not even getting KOs when he's fighting lower level opponents. Okay, the potential is there, but I'm going to say he wins this fight via decision. Remember or if you didn't know this, his base is boxing. Okay, he's been boxing since he was very young. His kicking game has really came around as well. He'll throw all types of spinning attacks at you there. And I think that he can go out there and outpointing Willie Cat. Even if he doesn't land a KO, I could still see moments in time in this fight where he lands some kind of flashy strike that has the crowd making a lot of noise that will help steer the judges towards his way. And then as far as him just outlanding Willie Cat, you think back to when Willie Cat took on Julio Arce, which I understand it was his UFC debut. He was much younger at the time. He's developed a lot since, but that was a time where we saw him fight a little bit of a higher caliber fighter, and he was outstruck 127-49 on total strikes. Okay, that wasn't the greatest look for him. And I think that a high-level striker like Juseng Yu could potentially go out there and push the volume on him. So give me Juseng Yu to win this fight. I'm going to say he wins a decision. The KO is live. Okay, when you have a sharpshooter like him, the KO is live, but I feel more comfortable backing him to win a decision here. Willie Cat's tough, and the majority of Yu's victories do come by way of decision. You take a look at the odds here. We have seen action coming in on Willie Cat, and I think that has a lot to do with people just believing he's a little bit more battle-tested, a little bit more octagon-tested. I'm on the other side of the fence here. I'm willing to buy in on the early hype on the Korean here. I think that he's the better fighter, and I like that plus sign next to his name. I think that there's some value on him as an underdog. Give me him to win a decision. Patchy Mix looks to save his name as he comes into this bout off of one of the worst UFC debut performances that we have ever seen. He was absolutely styled on by Mario Batista. And it wasn't just that he was outmatched. It was the fact that we clearly saw that he let the moment get to him. All right, that was not a vintage version of Patchy Mix. That was not the best version of himself. Okay, he was frozen on the feet. Not to say that his striking was ever his bread and butter. We all know that he's a grappling-based fighter. Okay, but he showed clear signs of having mental issues as he just walked forward with his face, eating strike after strike from Batista. So you have to wonder mentally where he's going to be at when he steps foot inside the octagon, as he's now taken on the KSW champ, Jakub Wikłacz. Now, what you're going to notice right off the rip is that the UFC did Mix a solid by matching him up here with a grappling-based fighter. Okay, so even if Mix freezes up on the feet like he did in his last bout, he's not going to be in too much danger, as his opponent has not one KO. And even with all that damage that we just saw Mix take on the feet, he's still a fighter that's never been KO'd. He does show to have a pretty solid chin. I don't see him getting hurt badly in this fight or getting KO'd. And even as badly as he looked on the feet in that last bout, let's not forget he's had some moments, right? You think about the knockout that he landed on Rufian Stotts. And also, if you remember how the fight ended against Batista, he started to pick up the pace with his striking. You saw that he started to get a little bit more comfortable and he started to land. I would give him the benefit of the doubt to say that he's the better striker here. So on the feet, he'll get the better of the striking. I think he'll be a little bit more comfortable now that he has that UFC bout already behind him. And at the end of the day, I think that we will see this fight go down to the mat. Both of these fighters welcome that kind of fight, and I think that Mix is going to be the superior grappler here. Okay, don't forget he has one of the nastiest back takes that we've seen. All right, and if you don't know that, because if you're just going off what you saw in his UFC debut, you must understand that he's pretty elite with his grappling. For whatever reason, he didn't even look to go that route against Batista. You could say it was signs of low fight IQ, but I chalk it up to octagon jitters. And if he could just be a little bit more comfortable and work on his head movement, I think that he'll be the vastly superior fighter here. Jakub, you take a look at some of his work. He's coming off a submission victory over Sebastian Presbys. Excuse me on the pronunciation there, but that's a fighter that he was locked into the cage with a lot of times. I think they had a trilogy there. There was a lot of back and forth action. They may have even fought 4 times. I believe they did fight 4 times, and that was a fighter that actually knocked him out once before in the 3rd round. But besides that, I mean, a good amount of success over in KSW, but the level of competition I don't believe is on the same level of what Mix was even battling against over on the Bellator scene. So we'll see. This is a big step up in competition for the Polish fighter here. We'll see if he can rise to the occasion and make this a competitive fight. I'm going to say that Mix settles into the octagon, and then we get to see what he's really about here. And I think that he wins this fight. And I'm going to say that he finds a finish. I'm going to say that he sinks in a rear naked choke and a fight where we see some, I don't even know if I want to say wacky scrambles, because we may see Mix go out here and really just dominate position. I think that he gets to a position where he will be able to end this fight. So give me Patchy Mix to sink in a rear naked choke and get the job done. And we're seeing that Mix is a decently sized favorite as he opened up around a -230, and we've seen action coming in on him where he's now right around a -270. And I think that people have the mindset that this is a good buy low spot, right? If he didn't just have that performance against Batista, this is a fight where he's probably like a -700, -800. He would be a huge favorite if he didn't just have the showcasing of himself that he just had in that UFC debut spot. And people also may look at how he started to look late in that fight when he was getting a little bit more comfortable, and they feel a little bit better about taking him here. At the end of the day, I think people just see or feel that he's the superior fighter, and I feel that way as well. I think that he finds the finish, and I say he hits that rear naked choke in the 1st or 2nd round. I think that we see an early finish in this fight. Austin Vanderford finally got an opportunity to showcase what he could do as an official UFC fighter, right? He went out there and finished up Veretennikov in that last bout. Of course, Vanderford had the victory on Dana White's Contender Series a long time ago. They didn't sign him. From there, he went over to the Bellator scene, and he had a world of success. In fact, if you take a look at his only 2 losses, they do come by way of very, very respectable talent. And Gegard Mousasi, the legend, and the other loss against Aaron Jeffrey. Now, you should note that both those losses do come by way of KO in the 1st round. Okay, but besides that, he's looked pretty good. Now, the strength of schedule is not extremely high, but I will let you know that I think that he's a legitimate fighter. Okay, he has the wrestling background, and he could take you down. He could dominate you down in the mat. He can ground and pound you. He can control you there. And also, his boxing skills have developed as he's putting a lot of work over at American Top Team in Coconut Creek. I look at him as a high caliber athlete. On the other hand, Ramiz Brahimaj is a fighter that has, or he had more of a jiu-jitsu base, but his boxing skills have developed over the years. He's very technical with his striking. But where I see Vanderford just being a step ahead is as the fight unravels, I just think that he's a more natural fighter. I think that he moves a little bit better. Brahimaj is a little bit robotic at times, and if you start to impose your will on him, he kind of gives in. Also, when you take a look at his strength of schedule, it's lower, right? Billy Goff, he's a fun fighter, but the way that Goff just handed him that guillotine, I mean, that was almost a joke the way he stuck his head in there. I'll give Brahimaj credit for pulling it off and showcasing some of the fight-ending ability he has with his submission arsenal. But, I mean, that guillotine choke ain't happening on Vanderford. I'll let you guys know that right now. That type of sub ain't happening. If that happens, you guys meet me here in the comment section, and I'll owe you something. Okay. The Mickey Gall KO. Mickey Gall is Mickey Gall. Okay. Besides that, Michael Gilmore and Sasha Palatnikov. Now, Sasha's my boy. He had a short-lived career in the UFC, but Sasha's bread and butter is his striking. Okay. He's a high-level striker, and Brahimaj was able to go out there and use his grappling skills to go out there and pull off the rear naked choke. But again, that was more of a stylistic matchup. And Michael Gilmore is very low level. Other than that, you think about the Max Griffin fight where he was getting bullied and beaten up before his ear fell off. And that was the only fight that he was finished in. It wasn't your typical KO, just so you understand. I mean, the chin is pretty tough. The reason why that fight was stopped is because the ear was hanging off of his head. But he has L's to Court McGee, Temba Garimbo. You run the tape back on both those fights, and you see that if you kind of impose your will on him, he will kind of fall in line with that. And that's how I see this fight playing out. I think that Vanderford is going to be the bully in there, and he'll get the better of wherever this fight goes. If Vanderford wants to go the grappling route, he could do that. And if he wants to showcase some of his developing boxing skills, I think that he'll be a step ahead. All right, Brahimaj will be technical, but you'll see Vanderford just be more comfortable in there and eat whatever he throws at him, and then he'll look to push the pace on him and break him down as the fight progresses. I like Vanderford here, and I think that there is potential that he can get a finish with the pace that he pushes, right? We saw in the last fight against Veretennikov, he was nonstop looking for a finish. But the thing I'll say is that Brahimaj is decently technical defensively with his jiu-jitsu. I'm going to say that he avoids being put in a position where he gets finished. He has shown to be pretty tough, and I'm going to say that Vanderford wins a unanimous decision. I'll say he takes every round, 30-27 for Vanderford here. We got the easy on your eyes, Veronica Hardy taking on Brogan Walker. And just a side note, that's a little bit of an interesting selection to name your little princess, Brogan. It's not a name that you really come across every day. And Brogan has her back up against the wall here as she enters this fight against Hardy as a massive underdog sneak peek, and also with her UFC roster spot on the line as she comes into this fight 0-2 inside the UFC. Hardy, on the other hand, has looked very good since making her return stint to the UFC. If you remember, she had some issues early on. She stepped away from the cage for some odd years, and she came back looking much more developed. And I think that was, without a doubt, directly correlated to the fact that Dan Hardy is her husband or fiance, and they spent a lot of time together. And of course, Hardy Dan Hardy departed from fighting in the cage early on due to some health issues, I believe. But we know that he is a very bright mind in the fight game, and you could see that he's put in work with his girl here, and she's really taken her game to another level, right? So you think back to when she was in there taking an L against Bea Malecki back in 2020. She steps away for 3 years, and she comes back and just makes Juliana Miller look like a novice in there. And Juliana Miller is a common opponent who has a victory over Brogan Walker, if you want to do some MMA math there. Okay, and after that victory, she defeats Jamie Lynn Horth and JJ Aldrich, which I don't believe they're horrible fighters. And I think that they're a step ahead of a Brogan Walker, just to kind of put things in perspective. Now, she did take an L against Eduardo Mora, where we saw once again, which has been an issue for her in the past, where she's kind of undersized and she gets bullied a little bit in the grappling department. But I chalk that L up a little bit more to the fact that Mora is she's big and she's strong and she's a decent fighter. So I'm really not holding that against Hardy too much here. I think that Hardy is going to be the better fighter here. And I think that Hardy can keep this fight standing, where she's going to be much quicker, much more dynamic with her striking, and she should be able to run circles around Walker. And if this fight does go down to the mat, I think that Hardy has plenty to offer. She has some developing jiu-jitsu, and she's kind of tricky, and I'll even say that she gets the better of whatever goes down there. So all in all, I do like Hardy to win this fight. And you take a look at the ratio of Walker in limited action, but I mean, this is a girl that is only landing 2 strikes per minute while absorbing 3.7. Hardy is at a negative ratio, but a lot of that has to do with her early stint in the UFC. And if you take a look at her recent work, the numbers are looking much better. And Hardy has to be the selection here. And I'm going to say that Hardy wins the decision. I mean, that's the safer route to go. The bulk amount of both these girls' fights go to decisions. You're rarely seeing finishes. And I'll say that Walker can push through some of the damage that she's going to take, so she'll make it to the final bell, but Hardy will be the superior fighter. This is a unanimous decision call on Hardy for me. So after Farid Basharat's recent victory over Victor Hugo, he hopped on the mic and he told the fight world, specifically the fight media, to put some respect on his name and to have that ranking ready after the weekend. Obviously, we see that didn't come to fruition. He's still unranked And now he's taking on Chris Gutierrez. This fight's taking place in the bantamweight division. If Basharat gets a victory here, there is a solid possibility that he will be ranked after it. We'll see how that goes. But the call to be ranked, I think, was very premature. Okay, he's undefeated, but you take a look at the level of competition inside the UFC. Yeah, the Damon Blackshear victory was okay. That was a competitive fight. Klidson Rodriguez and Victor Hugo, I don't believe they're on the UFC roster anymore. In fact, I know Hugo's not Rodriguez. Let's see how that goes for him. Taylor Lapilus isn't a bad fighter, but these 4 victories are not worthy of being ranked, in my opinion, especially not in this weight class. Okay, so just to touch upon that real quick. Now, Chris Gutierrez, on the other hand, he does bring into the cage technical striking. We know that he could work the calf kicks pretty well. Right? If you're not up to par there, he can get the better of you. He can squeak out a close decision over you in a kickboxing type of affair. We saw him basically just do that to John Castaneda. You think back to the Quang Lee fight, though. That was a fight where Lee took that fight on short notice. He was a massive underdog, and he had a lot of success using his grappling to control Gutierrez down on the mat. And I do believe that Gutierrez has some holes in his grappling. I know he's working on that, but he's already an older fighter. And I think that that's a hole in his game that we potentially could see Basharat take advantage of, because Basharat, he's well-rounded. He has solid jiu-jitsu skills, and I could see him not only getting on top, but if he gets on top, he knows what he's doing down there. He could dominate position and hold Gutierrez down. So that's something to take into consideration. Also, even though Gutierrez has a very solid record, when you actually dive into his resume, it's very inflated. Okay, yeah, the Frankie Edgar knockout, that was his big calling out, but it was an older Frankie Edgar that was on the verge of retirement. Other than that, you're not going to really have a lot to talk about. Okay, you're talking about fighters like Ryan McDonald. A lot of you guys don't even remember him. Gerald De Freitas, Vince Morales, Andre Ewell, Felipe Colares, Dana Batgarel, Haley Alatang, Quang Lee, again, John Castaneda. You know I'm not high on them. I mean, the list goes on and on of fighters that are really not on that level. And I think that Basharat, at least this far, has already proven that he's a legitimate up-and-comer, and I think he's a step above all of them. And at the end of the day, I just think that Basharat is a more well-rounded threat. Even if he doesn't get this fight down to the mat, I think that he could still outpoint Gutierrez. Okay, I like the boxing skills that Basharat has. Him and his brother are both very technical fighters. I know his brother Javid has really had some miscues in the cage. And unfortunately for him, he's had a chain of events take place inside the octagon that have been very unfortunate for him. But I believe that the brothers are technical and they're good fighters. And Farid is still undefeated, and he's 28 years old. He's surging as a fighter. Gutierrez is creeping up to that mid-30 mark. So I also like that for Basharat here. And I will side with Basharat winning this fight. And I'll say that he wins via decision. Okay, he's been known to do that, and Gutierrez has been a tough customer as far as finishing him. If you're going to defeat him, it's one thing, but you're not really going to go out there and finish him. And we could just pull that up real quick. He only has been submitted once. He's only been finished once throughout his career, and that was way back in the day against Raoni Barcelos, which back in 2018, Barcelos was a real issue. He was like a dark horse in the division. So besides that, we have seen that Gutierrez is hard to finish. So I like Basharat to win this fight, and I like the call for him to win a decision. So maybe you want to see, if you wanted to target him in this fight, you would look to target him via decision and try to get that line to come down. I'm not really crazy about him on the money line here at minus 350. I mean, I know I've been raving about Basharat, but let me be clear as we cap off this segment on this fight. Gutierrez, if he does come in fully motivated and really rises to the occasion here, he has some ability to make this a fight that plays out closely. If he stuffs the takedowns and this is a kickboxing type of match, he'll be in this fight. This could potentially be a fight that goes to a split decision. So I don't see a lot of value on Basharat, but I like Basharat to win a decision here. I love the fact that the UFC is giving a platform like UFC 320 to Ateba Gautier. He is more than deserving. It's almost certain that he's a star in the making. Okay, you take a look at the physique, you take a look at the knockout power that he has, and then on top of all that, you have to understand that he's actually a very polished and technical kickboxer who, at his young age, already has years of experience with his stand-up. Now, if you're going to go out there and get your hand raised against him, now's the time to do it in the sense that he's still very young and needs to round out his overall game. But Ozzy Diaz is not the guy that's going to go out there and test him in that fashion. Okay, first off, Ozzy Diaz doesn't have much of a ground game to talk about. And if you're going to go out there and potentially expose Gautier, it would be by taking him to the deep waters and taking him down and out wrestling him and out grappling him. Diaz hasn't shown us really any of that thus far. And in fact, he plays right into what Gautier does best, as Ozzy Diaz is more of a clunky brawler that will look to bring the fight on the feet to you. And while he does that, he leaves himself out there to be knocked out in brutal fashion, as we saw Xingming Yang do that to him. Joseph Pfeiffer did that to him. And you can even go back to early on in his pro career where he was knocked out in the regional scene in just 15 seconds by a fighter by the name of Santiago Diaz. All right, so, I mean, this is really the UFC serving Diaz to Gautier on a platter. Okay, that's exactly what this is. And you better believe that Gautier will deliver on that, just as he did against Robert Valentin and Jose Medina, right? Medina is a similar type of fighter to Diaz, a low-level fighter that gives you that type of opportunity. But at least Medina shows to have a chin. He's a durable fighter, and we still saw what Gautier did to him as he brutally finished him in the first round. So, I mean, listen, I don't need to sit here and talk about this fight anymore. All right, we all know what's about to happen here, and what's about to happen is that Gautier is going to brutally knock out Ozzy Diaz in the first round. All right, I'm calling it right now. It's a first round KO. Gautier is upwards of a minus 1,100 on some of these books. He's a huge favorite. We'll probably see the line continue to be steamed. We'll probably see him settle in as like a minus 1,400 favorite. And what I would say there is, I don't really promote targeting those types of bets. It's a little ridiculous. But what you'd probably want to do here is target a first round finish, a first round KO finish. But even then, you're going to probably see a high line next to it. So this may be one of those fights that you just sit back and enjoy from a fan perspective. See what kind of line you can get if it looks appetizing, but look for that first round KO or that under 1.5, something like that. That's what's going to happen here. Hey guys, I just want to take a second to say thanks for tuning in. Walk the Line only goes as far as you guys let it go. All right. Every subscribe button that's smashed by you guys, every like button that's smashed by you guys helps me take this channel to the next level. And including following me on all my social media, man. It really helps me out. I'm on Instagram. I'm on X. Go give me a follow. And please smash those buttons for me. And meet me in the comment section below. I'll catch you over there. Edmen, the Golden Boy, Shahbazyan takes on André Muniz in the middleweight division. And you better believe that a lot of the recent success that we've seen from Shahbazyan is due to the fact that he's been putting in a lot of work over at Extreme Couture. Or he's been getting a lot of work with Eric Nixick, and he has all these bodies to work with. You see him training with Sean Strickland over here. All right, the move that he made to go to a powerhouse gym compared to back in the day when he was coached by Ronda Rousey's old coach, Count Draculus, okay, was a very intelligent move. All right, you have to understand, Shahbazyan is just 27 years old. He's about to be 28, but he's a very young fighter, and he already has a lot of fight experience. He has 20 pro fights, with the bulk of them taking place inside the octagon. And I like the fact that he has those tough losses to learn from. It all hasn't been a walk in the park for Shahbazyan early on. Okay, you could think of some performances that are quite brutal in the sense that he was up and he made a bad decision that ended up costing him the fight, right? You think about the Gerald Mearshart fight. He put himself in a vulnerable position late in the second round. He ends up getting subbed. The Anthony Hernandez fight, I mean, listen, Fluffy Hernandez, we all know he is just truly one of the best fighters at this weight class. So take that one for what you will. The Imavov loss, I mean, these are high-level fighters. Also Jack Hermanson. But you think about like the Derek Brunson fight too. In a lot of these losses, he was looking good early on, and then he made some moves and decisions that put himself in a vulnerable position, specifically down on the mat, where he was taken advantage of and finished. Okay, but I like the fact going into this fight now that he has those learning experiences under his belt, because he's only a better fighter because of all that. And you take a look back, man. You think about this, right? He comes into the UFC. He faces off with Darren Stewart, the hard-hitting Darren Stewart, who was an underrated fighter. He had decent takedown defense at that time. And Shahbazyan tried to close the distance and take him down to showcase some of the jiu-jitsu skills that he has, or had even back then, because he actually came into MMA with a decent jiu-jitsu pedigree. if you didn't know that. As a young teenager, he was active in the jiu-jitsu world, and Stewart made him work for those takedowns, and then that fight ended up being a real barn burner. Right then and there, we saw his true colors, and we saw how tough he was. He pushed through and got his hand raised there, but he truly showed that he's a tough customer. He was a tough kid. He was facing off with these veterans, and he started to build and start a win streak leading up to some of those losses that we talked about. But they're all against high-level fighters. And for those of you guys that have been watching this show for some time, you guys know that I am a believer in Shahbazyan. I've been raving about him for some time, and I've always said I feel as he matures and with time, he's going to take his game to a whole nother level. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. And he still has plenty of time. He's just 27 years old. Even if he does fall short here and there over the next couple of years, he still has plenty of time to reach his prime when he's 32, 33 to make his run in this division. Okay, he's a well-rounded fighter. Now, we know what he's facing up against here. Okay, a dangerous jiu-jitsu player who at one point in time was really looked at to be one of the nastiest jiu-jitsu players inside the UFC. Okay, when you saw what he was going out there and doing, just subbing everybody. When he subbed Jacare Souza, that just stood out so much when he went out there and hit him with the inverted armbar, which Souza, of course, was one of the most accomplished jiu-jitsu mixed martial artists that we've seen throughout the years, throughout history, realistically, okay? And he piggybacked that up with another sub over Anders, and then he started to run into some issues, and he lost 3 of his last 4 fights, and the issue I have with the losses is that mentally he seems to struggle inside the cage at times. That's what I don't like from him. He seems like he's not all there in the cage at some times, and that's a problem when you're facing a fighter like Edmen who is mentally there. Okay, he's made some mistakes, but he is in there to get his hand raised. Okay, he is a motivated fighter, and I think he'll be the more motivated fighter here. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Muniz take an L here, and the UFC cut him or he eases into retirement. I don't know where he's at mentally, and he was finished in all 3 of those recent losses. So where Muniz potentially could have success in this fight is if Shahbazyan makes another mental error down on the mat, and we see Muniz reverse him, put him in a dominant position. Maybe he rains down some ground and pound, or of course, just cinching up a submission. I mean, if you play around on the mat, the ground game that I was talking about of Shahbazyan earlier, right? He has a little bit of a jiu-jitsu game, but I don't think that it's anything on the level of a Muniz. But this is not a jiu-jitsu match. This is a mixed martial arts match, and Shahbazyan is the fighter that's putting it all together more fluidly, and he's the fighter that I think gets his hand raised, and I think that he could really showcase his striking here if he keeps this fight standing. And that's what we've seen from him recently. He's fighting very intelligently. He's creating space and using solid footwork to showcase his very polished kickboxing. I mean, what Shahbazyan just did to André Petroski and Dylan Bucka, specifically on the feet, was very impressive. So I think that he carries that momentum into this fight. I like Shahbazyan to get the job done here. Now, we take a look at the odds. If you guys are paying attention, you'll notice that there are a decently amount of heavy favorites throughout this card. That's why I'm trying to narrow in on specific method of victory, over unders and all that, and also trying to throw some dogs your way. We already have one dog. Let's see if we can find a couple more underdogs, but this won't be one here. I like Shahbazyan to win this fight, and I do believe that Shahbazyan can end this fight via strikes. When you take a look at the track record, when Muniz loses a fight, he gets finished. And even as high caliber as his jiu-jitsu is, he's been sub before as well. But I will say that Shahbazyan gets the finish via strikes. He'll get a TKO stoppage here. We got ranked women's bantamweight action here as the number 5th ranked Macy Chiasson takes on number 10 Yana Santos. And Santos, she comes into this bout off of the Miesha Tate victory. It's kind of an important fight to talk about because although I was very happy to see how that fight took place, in the sense that I had an official play on her, caught her at dog odds, but quite honestly, I don't rate Miesha Tate that highly, specifically as she is right now at the tail end of her career. And that victory really didn't say that much to me because although she did what she should have done early on, which was stuffing takedowns, bloodying Miesha Tate up on the feet because Tate is very low level defensively. She is there to be hit. But then you actually saw Miesha Tate get a takedown later on in that fight, and she controlled Yana Santos for over 5 minutes. And it had me on the edge of my seat. And that fight should have not played out like that. And now you're talking about Santos getting in there with a fighter like Chiasson, who has a lot more to offer the fight game right now compared to an aged Misha Tate. All right, Macy Chiasson is a well-rounded threat. Her striking has really come around, and she should be a clear step ahead, in my opinion, anywhere this fight goes. I think that she could actually change levels and have success down in the mat against Santos. And then on the feet, Santos is aggressive and tough, but she's very stiff. And I think that Chiasson will be much more fluid, and she'll get the better of wherever this fight goes, quite simply. That's kind of how I'm looking at this fight. I know Chiasson's coming off of the Vieira loss. That was a close fight, a disappointing one nonetheless, but Ketlen Vieira is a step ahead of Santos, in my opinion. And you take a look at the more recent performances before that. She looked good against Mayra Bueno Silva. She looked really good against Pani Kianzad. Even the Irene Aldana fight, that was one that she was clearly ahead in before getting hit with that awkward up kick where she was finished, right? The up kick to the liver. When's the last time you saw that? And think about the victory she had before that against Norma Dumont, who was very talented. I mean, I think that Chiasson has shown to be fighting at a high level inside the octagon, and you got to go with her over an aging Yana Santos, who now Santos is 35. She's creeping up on 36 years old. Not to say that Chiasson's that young herself, but I think that Santos has more mileage on her. We've seen her hurt and bloodied up throughout the years. She recently had a baby. You take a look at her professional fights. She has 25 professional fights compared to the 14 of Chiasson. I think that Chiasson has more to offer the fight game. She's long, she's rangy. She's going to have almost a 4-inch reach advantage. She's much taller. I think she could have success from the outside. And Chiasson is the pick here. Now, this is where it gets tricky because Chiasson is actually a fight finisher. You take a look at her 10 victories, 8 of them come by way of finish, 5 KOs, 3 subs. And Yana Santos, the bulk majority of her losses are by way of finish. But her last 2 losses come by way of decision. I'm going to say that we see that once again as Chiasson will be a step ahead, but doesn't find the finish. I mean, there's potential we could see a finish compared to like your average women's mixed martial arts bout. I mean, there is a recipe for Chiasson to get a stoppage here. I wouldn't be shocked, but I feel a little bit more confident in leaning into the decision pick here. You take a look at the line, Chiasson opening up here at right around a minus 230, and it's coming down slightly, but she's over a minus 200 favorite, and I would be interested to see where this line goes, and I feel I would rather be on the Chiasson side, so I hope that line continues to dip, and I have a decent amount of confidence that Chiasson will prove to be the superior fighter. I know some people look at this bout and say, oh, this has all the makings of being a closely contested match, your typical women's bantamweight matchup here. I get that mindset, but my gut is telling me that Chiasson shows up and is a clear step ahead. In the featherweight division, the now 40-year-old Josh Emmett takes on the 29-year-old Youssef Zalal, who is currently in the middle of a very successful second run inside the octagon. If you guys remember, in that first stint, he had some ups and downs, but he was very young at the time. He was in his early 20s, and it wasn't all bad, okay? Because I know that he did end that first stint on a 3-fight losing skid, and then he had the draw before the UFC parted ways with him. But early on, he started off with a 3-fight winning streak where he had victories over Lingo, Griffin, and Peter Barrett. Lower level fighters, which no disrespect, as you guys, if you used to catch my MMA live discussion episodes, you guys know I interviewed Peter Barrett and Jordan Griffin, and both of those dudes are real solid guys. But I mean, realistically, those aren't the most high caliber victories. And Zalal was going out there and kind of cruising his way to decisions, which the UFC, not to say that they frown upon that, but you guys know that they like to see action. They want to see you show a little something as far as finishing ability. And I do believe that's why the UFC was so quick to part ways with him after he went on that little bit of a skid. You take a look at the level of competition he was losing to. You're talking Ilia Topuria, one of the greatest of all time. Sang-Woo Choi was on a bit of a streak around that time, and Sean Woodson also was having success before the Damon Blackshear draw. Now, after he got cut by the UFC, I liked what I was seeing as I was keeping tabs on him on Instagram, and I saw that he was staying very active. Okay, not only just in the MMA world, but he had a couple kickboxing and boxing bouts as well, fighting over in the Sparta promotion. I believe all those bouts that he fought in after getting cut were all in the Sparta promotion. And what I liked about it is he was staying very active. He knew that he needed to continue to get that experience and refine his craft. And that combined with training over at Factory X, which he's one of the real staples over there, right? He's one of the young studs over at Factory X. He gets a lot of attention. You expected to see his game continue to climb and grow, okay? And that's exactly what we saw. And going into the UFC comeback fight against Billy Q, right? I had him winning that fight, and he initially was an underdog. We started to see a lot of action come in on him. I think he closed as a slight favorite, but now we're not at those days where you can catch him at that kind of line, which we're going to get to the line here in a second. And so since that return bout, went out there, submitted Billy Q, submitted Jarno Arens, showing his grappling abilities, submitted Jack Shore. And then in his last fight, it wasn't the most entertaining, but he also showed that he has high fight IQ, he has solid footwork, and he can go out there and get the job done one way or another as he fought a safe bout against Calvin Kattar. Now, you need to look back at that Calvin Kattar fight because this one's very similar in the sense that he's fighting an aged veteran who is very accomplished, but his days are far behind him. Josh Emmett's going to go out here and look to land heavy, and I think that Youssef Zalal is going to be hard to find. I think that Zalal is going to fight a very similar fight to the Kattar fight, and I just don't think that Emmett's going to find him. Emmett has a wrestling background. He has some wrestling abilities, but I don't think that he's going to want to do that. He's polished down on the mat. He'll be able to defend, or he'll be able to put in some work down on the mat in his own right. So I just don't see Emmett looking to go that path. I think that this ends up being a fight where Emmett's kind of hunting him down, looking to land a haymaker. And in the meantime, Zalal's not there to be found, and he's outpointing him. That's how I see this fight taking place. I mean, you look at the numbers here. Zalal is only absorbing 1.8 strikes inside the octagon. He does not play that game, and he's going to understand that Emmett has serious power, which Emmett is one of the most hardest hitting 145ers that we've ever seen. All right, don't forget that, even though he was put out by my boy Stevens, which I was there live for that fight there. But I just don't see Emmett finding him. Now, it is important to note that even though Emmett has been being picked apart and really brutalized in the feet, he's been being outstruck in a nasty fashion, right? He's bloodied up. He's hurt constantly. You take a look at the level of competition, though. You're talking Lerone Murphy, Ilia Topuria, Yair Rodriguez. I mean, these are high caliber fighters. And in the mix of those losses, he did land that haymaker on Bryce Mitchell. Okay. And dating back to him being on a solid 5-fight winning streak that led up to that Jeremy Stevens KO loss. So there is that possibility that the losses are just coming due to the fact that he's fighting the elite of the elite. But I mean, he's 40 years old, and I just think that he has to start to take a little bit more of a decline with him being that old. And Youssef Zalal, it's never been finished. He's shown to be pretty tough, durable, but more importantly, tactical and defensive. And that will pay dividends here, and it will lead him to winning a decision, in my opinion. So I'll take Youssef Zalal on the DEC. Now take a look at this line. Zalal is a big favorite. He's creeping up on a minus 400. If this fight what was to be made a couple years ago, the line would be probably completely backwards. It's kind of funny to think how the fight game shakes up with time. And the younger fighter is going to come in as a big favorite here. And this is a young man's game. Zalal has shown a lot of development. He's a good fighter. And is he worth being a minus 370 favorite? I'm going to say no. I don't see a lot of value on that line. This is one of those ones where I'm looking at it and I'm saying there's value on Emmett, which you can catch right around a plus 300. I know he's 40 years old, but this dude is a freak athlete. You better believe that he's going to show up on the scales ripped and in phenomenal shape. But he needs to change a couple things up tactically in order to get the job done here. All right, he can't just be marching forward, throwing overhands. He's got to set something up to shake things up. But I think that Zalal wins the decision. But I'm kind of hoping that we see Emmett show up and shake things up and get it finished. That would be wild. That would really set things off as the main card starts to go underway. Now things are about to get amped up as every single one of these next 4 fights are the types of fights that I feel you got to be standing up right in front of the TV for. All right, we got Joe Body Bags Pyfer taking on Abus Magomed. Some of you guys know I am a big fan of Pyfer's, right? He's one of my favorite up-and-coming fighters in the fight game. Dude hits like a Mack truck. I love the nastiness that he brings to the octagon with. Now, I know he's coming off one of his more disappointing performances, but he still did enough to get his hand raised against Kelvin Gastelum. Now, don't get it twisted. Just because he was a little hesitant in that KG fight, don't think for a second that he is not a fight finisher. All right. 9 of his 14 victories come by way of KO. 3 of them come by way of sub. Just 2 of them come by way of decision. I think that the KG fight was a little bit of an off day at the office for him, if you will. And again, it was still enough to go out there and get the job done. He landed heavy on KG early on, but we all know it's basically impossible to knock out Gaslam. And I think that Pyfer almost knew that going into the bout. Gaslam has still never been KO'd. And it's like Pyfer knew it wasn't going to happen. You would have liked to have seen him look to be the first man to ever done that, but whatever. It was what it was. You think about the fight that he had before that, what he did to MAB. He had the brutal KO victory in just 1 minute and 25 seconds. I'll circle back to the Hermanson loss. I don't want you guys thinking I'm just completely skipping over that. Okay, but he submitted Abdul Razak Al Hassan, showcasing that he actually does have a jiu-jitsu game, right? He was training jiu-jitsu from a young age. In fact, he's been training mixed martial arts from a young age, and he does have the ability to sub you down on the mat. You look at what he did to Mearshart, starched Mearshart in the first round, knocked out Alan Amadovsky in the first round. I know that's a lower level fighter, but he still went out there and did what he should have. The Ozzy Diaz KO, we already talked about that earlier. I know that Diaz is a lower level fighter, but he went out there and did what he should have done. Knocked out Austin Trotman. That was the knockout victory he had right after he had that unfortunate situation take place on DWCS where his arm was dislocated against Dustin Stoltzfus. All right, so as promised, I'll circle back up to the Hermanson loss, which was a 5-round fight. He went out there, took the first 2 rounds, and it was a learning experience for him. He slowed down a bit, and Hermanson is a nasty fighter, man. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's a durable fighter, and Hermanson took it over with this cardio. Right, this is another fight it's a 3-round fight. Pyfer will be just fine, and when he eventually does get to another 5-rounder, he's going to be much more prepared as he continues to get all this octagon experience battling all these dangerous opponents. And that's exactly what Magomedov is. All right, let's not overlook Magomedov because he is a well-rounded and dangerous threat, and he's coming off a good deal of success as he's on a 3-fight winning streak. The Bruno Ferreira fight was a fun one. And what I really liked about that victory for him is that we've seen him struggle a bit with his cardio. And that was a fight that he dug deep and looked better as it went on. In the 3rd round, he got that finish. The Michel Pereira fight, that was a very strange one. I think we all have to agree that Pereira wasn't fully in the cage on that night. I'll still give him some credit there, but that wasn't a prime ready to go Pereira. Something was off there. And before that, he had a victory over Warley Alves. Before that, losses to Kyle Bahalo and Sean Strickland. The Strickland fight, I want to highlight this one a bit. That was a fight where he had the early success in the first round. Strickland was patient in that main event bout, and then Strickland finished him up in the second. I think that's what we're going to see here. I think Pyfer is going to get a knockout in the second round. And the first round, it's possible that we see a KO there as well, because if they clash, I mean, you could see a knockout either way. Both these fighters throw heavy. But Pyfer can finish him in the first round, but I have a feeling there'll be a little bit of a feeling out process before Pyfer finds an opportunity to land heavy on a Magomedov that starts to slow down a little bit. All right, I'm calling a 2nd round KO on Magomedov. Magomedov has been finished often. He's been finished in 4 of his 6 losses. He's been subbed as well. I wouldn't be shocked if Pyfer hurt him and followed him down to the mat and jumped on a rear naked choke or some type of arm triangle or guillotine, something like that, where Magomedov kind of just knows that he's done for. Wouldn't be shocked at all. Pyfer only has 3 subs, but I will say once again, he has that in his arsenal, and you guys will see that with time. Right? He's been getting in a lot of work with high-level fighters, high-level grapplers. We all know that he's good friends with Sean Brady. He trains up there in Philly with Gracie Philly, and there's a lot of high-level grapplers up there. I know he's been getting work with Dean Thomas as well. So expect him to continue to take his game to another level. And he has a huge frame for the division, as does Magomedov, which makes this fight that much more fun. I think when we see both of them so physically imposing, squaring off with each other before the fight kicks off, this is really going to set the tone for the main card. And this is one I like. So give me Pyfer to get that 2nd round KO. Let's take a look at what kind of line we're talking about here. We're seeing Pyfer right around a minus 225. Okay, he's a pretty decently sized favorite. Another fighter that we're talking about that's a decently sized favorite, and I get it. I think that he should be. All right, I understand that on the other side, Magomedov's going to be dangerous as well, but I see Pfeiffer imposing his will. Maybe what you want to do here is look for a specific method of victory on Pfeiffer for the KO. If you want to get wild with it, maybe you target specifically that second round KO to get a little bit more value. Because on the money line at minus 225, I mean, I don't see an extreme amount of value there. I think you might want to narrow in the method of victory here. So a lot on the line for Yuri Prohaska here as he takes on the number 4th ranked Khalil Roundtree. If Prohaska gets the job done and the favorite Ankalaev also wins in the main event, that's the fight that will be made next. So this is a potential title shot on the line for Prohaska. I got to be careful here not to be biased with my breakdown because Prohaska, without a doubt, is one of my favorite fighters in the game. And it's solely due to the energy that he brings into the octagon. I mean, he's a fight finisher. He's just a straight up warrior. Okay, the mentality that he brings inside the octagon, it's just so admirable, right? This is a fighter that's willing to go out on his shield while looking to take you out, right? We've seen him in some of the most crazy wars that the division has ever seen. You think about the Glover Teixeira fight, all right? We've seen him put himself out there, right? We've seen him put himself in vulnerable positions to try to get his hand raised, right? You think about the Alex Pereira fights, right? He brought the action. He didn't fight safely. He knew how dangerous Pereira was, but he looked to march forward and looked to land something heavy while running into damage, all right? And you have to love the way that he's bounced back from tough losses. That shows his mental, right? After getting knocked out by Pereira the first time, he rebounds with an amazing performance against Rakic, where he marches through early damage and then breaks Rakic down and finishes him. He gets finished once again in the rematch against Pereira. Look what he does in the next fight, what he just did against Jamal Hill. That to me was one of the more entertaining fights that the division has ever seen. I love that fight where he finished Jamal Hill, and props to Hill in that bout as well, because he brought it too. Right, it takes two to tango, but Prohaska, he's that guy. And he let us know that off the rip when the UFC signed him and they threw him in there with a very accomplished and proven fighter like Volkan Ozdemir. And he finished him up in the second round. That was a wild fight. You think about the Dominic Reyes KO in the second round with the spinning back elbow, setting up that opportunity that he had against Glover Teixeira. I mean, he has been such a treat ever since the UFC signed him. And he was doing that outside of the UFC, even before they signed him. This is what he's been doing since his career started. He's just an absolute fight finisher. Khalil Roundtree is a fighter that I want to tip my hat to as well. He has taken his game to a whole nother level as of recently, as was showcased when he faced off against Alex Pereira. Even though he came up short, he had a lot of success early on. And, that was a fight that, some people would say going into it, he wasn't deserving of the opportunity. Even though he was going out there and winning fights, you take a look at the resume. He doesn't really have a lot of big names under his belt, right? His winning streak that he had going into the Pereira fight was over fighters like Carl Robertson, Chris Dawkins, an older Anthony Smith. I mean, Dustin Jacoby, Modestas Bukauskas, I mean, those aren't typically fighters that lead you to be fighting for the belt. But in that Pereira fight, he showed that he was more than deserving of the opportunity. And he showcased that once again after taking the L to Pereira in the way that he just fought Jamal Hill, where he completely outclassed him. So, I mean, Khalil Roundtree is hitting on all cylinders. But what I want to showcase or highlight here is you take a look at the Pereira loss, where he took a lot of damage. You take a look at the Kuti Laba fight. That was a fight where he was mounted and brutalized, finished up in the first round. The Johnny Walker loss, I think that was the one where he got hit up with the elbows in the clinch. That was a nasty finish as well. So see, he's had some losses that are a little alarming when you're now going to be thrown in there with a fighter that brings the energy of a Prohaska. Okay, that's a little alarming. And the one fight that I'm going to talk about where he took an L, where he wasn't even finished, it was alarming in its own right because you shouldn't really lose to Prachnio. Prachnio has shown as of recently he's a little better than maybe we thought he was, but Prachnio is not near the threat or near the animal of a Prohaska. So, how I'm looking at this fight, trying not to be biased because Prohaska is going to put himself out there as he looks to land his damage. And it is possible that the technical Muay Thai striking of Roundtree can counter him and hurt him and finish him. Okay. That's a possibility, a likely possibility. But then there's even the more realistic possibility of what we're going to see, which is Prohaska just being an animal marching through all of what Roundtree throws his way while landing nasty strikes and starting to get in the head of Roundtree, basically just breaking him down where Roundtree's going to understand that he's in there with the alpha male. And I think that Prohaska finds a finish here. I think that Prohaska gets a TKO stoppage. This fight's not making it to the final bell. That ain't happening. Prohaska's going to get a KO. But at the same time, if he's to lose this fight, he's going to run into a counter strike and he's going to get hurt and he's going to get knocked out. That's how he loses this fight. You could say, oh, well, maybe he loses a decision by being outpointed technically. I don't see that happening. I don't, just for the fact that if Roundtree starts to have that success from the outside, Prohaska will be a man on a mission and he will close the distance and he'll look to go berserk in there to the point that he's either getting that KO or he's still taking the rounds with just the output and the energy that he's bringing towards Roundtree. Roundtree's not going to be able to cruise and style from the outside. This is going to be a crazy paced fight, which is going to play right into Prohaska's strengths. All right. We're looking at Prohaska here, where he opened up as a minus 195, and we see the line coming down where he's a minus 170 now. And that's what we kind of been seeing on a lot of these sports books. It doesn't surprise me. All right. Roundtree's been looking good. He's been having some success in the cage. People are looking at this bout simply as Roundtree, the technician, may be able to take advantage of Prohaska, who has shown to have defensive flaws. He keeps his hands down low. Can Roundtree take advantage of that? I say no, he doesn't take advantage of it. Prohaska, with his super long 80-inch wingspan, jumping in and out, lands some nasty strikes and finishes Khalil Roundtree in the first or second round, early KO. This fight's going to jump off to a quick start, and we're going to see a KO. Guys, don't forget, if you want my official targets for this card, if you want the bets that I am targeting, the ones that I like the most, shoot me an email or DM me on Instagram. I got a couple options for you guys. And also note, for all you football fans, if you're tuned into college football regularly, if you're watching the NFL, including the MLB, if you're a baseball fan, the playoffs are about to kick off. I am a huge fan of all those sports. I put a lot of time in, believe it or not, besides just this MMA thing, I put a lot of time into the MLB and football in general. So if you want my targets weekly for those other sports, reach out to me there as well. Corey Sandhagen gets a massive opportunity here. Not only does he get a chance to become the bantamweight champion of the world, but he gets an opportunity to say that he defeated Merab Dvalishvili, which would take his legacy to a whole nother level, as I have Merab as the greatest bantamweight of all time already for what he's accomplished. So we'll see if Sandhagen can pump the brakes on all that. I mean, I think Sandhagen is a very talented, well-rounded threat, but the way that Merab is moving inside the octagon right now is about second to none in the way that he does it. Okay, as far as his cardio and his pace, the way he pushes and imposes his will on the opposition, it's pretty crazy. And he's getting better fight to fight. That's what makes it even more crazy, because if you expect that pattern to continue and for him to even look better than he just looked in his last bout, that's a problem for Sandhagen, all right? What he just did in the rematch against Sean O'Malley wasn't even competitive. Just he absolutely dominated from start to finish before he got to finish in the third round. Of course, in the first fight, they went to a decision. I thought he dominated that fight as well, but it took place very differently. And some people tried to give certain rounds to O'Malley. I wasn't really in agreement with that. I thought that Dvalishvili really dominated that bout. But you saw in the last two fights for Merab, okay, the Umar Nurmagomedov fight and the rematch, that he has taken his game to a whole nother level. And what is Sandhagen going to have to offer Merab here in order to defeat him? What you could say is that we have seen that Sandhagen has some wrestling ability, but against Umar Nurmagomedov, he was taken down a couple times. He was controlled, in fact, for over 5 minutes. He was taken down 5 times on 13 attempts, and I don't like that. Okay, even though we know Umar is elite, we saw how Umar looked against Merab. All right, so I mean, you can't just go off basic fight math like that, but just to take that into consideration. But I'm sure Sandhagen has been training his wrestling and grappling diligently and has been looking to take that to another level. And he also had some excuses for the Umar loss. He said that, you know, that was a fight that he kind of misgauged how Umar was going to be in there. He thought that he would have gassed out a little bit as the fight went on, and he mismanaged how he fought that fight. Take that for what you will. If there's some truth to it, maybe that's a good thing for him. So he didn't really deliver as he could have. I mean, any fighter could really say that after they take a loss, though, right? So, the rebound victory over Davison Figueiredo, that's one where I like the fact that he got a finish, but Figueiredo, he's talented. He's really a flyweight fighter, and stylistically, that was really a solid matchup for Sandhagen. This is a different beast here. And to cut to the chase, who's not picking Merab to win this fight? How can you not pick Merab to win this fight? I am going to pick him. We'll dissect the line here in a second. We'll talk a method of victory, but you have to pick Merab to win this fight. It's a 5-round championship fight. The longer the fight goes, it's just going to probably go even more so towards Merab's way with his cardio playing a factor. I think he can get takedowns. I think that he can put himself in a dominant position down on the mat. As talented as Sandhagen is there, we've seen him vulnerable at times, and we've seen him make mistakes. You think about what Aljamain Sterling did to him. It was a long time ago, but we've seen him make those mental errors. Maybe Sandhagen can try to throw a flying knee and time a takedown and land something brutal and shock the world like he did to Frankie Edgar. But Merab is not Frankie Edgar. All right. He's at a different point in his career, and Merab is a different animal anyways at that. So good luck landing a flying knee. If Sandhagen can keep this fight standing, if he's able to defend the takedowns, all right, he's long, he's rangy, he's technical with his striking. He's going to have a little bit of a reach advantage here. He's the longer fighter. Maybe potentially he could win a fight like that from outpointing Merab from the outside. I'll throw that out there. But with that being said, Merab's striking has taken massive leaps as well in the last couple of fights. His boxing's looking better than ever. So give me Merab to win this fight. I don't think that he's going to find the finish on Sandhagen. Sandhagen is crafty. I think Sandhagen can make it to the final bell. The only time that he's been finished was when he got subbed by Sterling. Okay, so I think he could avoid that, but give me Merab to win a decision here. I'm not going to be able to pick Sandhagen, and it's going to be hard for me to really say there's any kind of value on Sandhagen's line, even though it looks nice and juicy next to his name, plus 300, plus it's coming down a little bit, but I guess if you want, I could say that I'm not really crazy about taking Merab here as a minus 355 or a minus 370, just based off the fact that Sandhagen is talented. But this is a tricky one. This is really a tricky one. I'm on the fence of where I find the value here, but I think Merab wins this fight. He's a big favorite. Give me Merab to get the job done via decision. That's probably what you want to look to do. You probably target Merab to win via decision and say he doesn't get that finish. Try to get that line to come down. It almost feels funny to sit here and break down a Magomed Ankalaev fight where I can say he is the reigning light heavyweight champion of the world. As for you guys that have been tuning into the show for some time, you know that I felt that Ankalaev was the best light heavyweight fighter on planet Earth for years. I just felt that it was only a matter of time before he became the champion. I have a great deal of respect for Alex Pereira. I think he is one of the most dangerous fighters that we've ever seen, one of the greatest strikers that we've ever seen. And it's truly amazing how much he's rounded out his overall game in such a short period of time, right? You take a look at the last fight. He stuffed every single takedown that Ankalaev threw his way. But even then, it wasn't enough. Ankalaev was the fighter that was outstriking him as he outlanded him 127-97. You talk about the significant strikes, 94-76 for Ankalaev. Don't forget, it was Ankalaev at the end of the second round that almost had the knockout. And I called for the very likely scenario that Ankalaev would knock out Pereira the first time they fought. And I'm calling for it again. As dangerous as Pereira is offensively, we have seen consistently that he is there to be hit. He's very aggressive. It cost him in the Adesanya trilogy, right? The last fight, was it? They fought so many times, including the kickboxing match. But the last time they fought, it did catch him. It caught up with him where he got caught in the second round. And that was a fight that, in my opinion, he could have easily won if he would have just toned back a little bit. You talk about the Roundtree fight. That was a fight that he took a lot of damage. And even in the fight prior to when he got knocked out by Adesanya, if you remember, he got hurt very badly at the end of the first or whatever round it was. He got hurt very badly. He was wobbled. He got saved by the bell. And in that last fight against Ankalaev, he got hurt once again. So he runs into trouble And he's only getting older and older. Obviously, we all are. He's not 38 years old. He does have a lot of damage on him. He has the kickboxing background. He's taken a lot of strikes to the head. I think that Ankalaev's very live to get a KO here. In fact, I don't want to give you a sneak peek on my final decision just yet. Maybe we could preview this fight a little bit more so. I think that Ankalaev actually gets a takedown in this fight too. So I'm curious to see how Pereira looks off of his back. I think this time Ankalaev, having been in there with him before and now knowing what he needs to do to change things up to set up a takedown, I think that he can set up a takedown. He has a pretty solid wrestling. I know some people believe it's not as good as others believe it is, but he's a well-rounded fighter. And even if Ankalaev doesn't get that takedown, I still think that he outstrikes Pereira, and I still think that he is more likely to land that KO. Okay, with that all being said, Pereira is definitely live to land his own knockout. If you think for a second, I'm just going to sit here and talk about how Ankalaev is just going to run through Pereira, you're wrong, because you would be sadly mistaken if you didn't acknowledge the danger that Pereira is going to bring into this fight. Every round starts on the feet. And again, last time the entirety of the fight took place in the feet. Pereira will be live to land a knockout. 10 of his 12 victories come by way of KO. And he's going to throw the kitchen sink at Ankalaev's head. And the same way I just said Ankalaev has that last bout to build and learn off of, Pereira also has that last bout in his pocket. So he can make his adjustments to try to set up his fight-ending sequence. I'm going to say that Ankalaev avoids that. But more importantly, more specifically, as Pereira looks to implement that, Ankalaev counters him, or even as the aggressor, he lands that knockout strike. Give me Magomed Ankalaev to land a second round knockout. This time he hurts him in the second round and he finishes Pereira. Give me Magomed Ankalaev to get that finish. He retains his belt. He defends his belt. Magomed Ankalaev is right around a minus 234. Over here, he opened up as a minus 240. We've had a lot of time to analyze this line. And I think that Ankalaev will, for sure, obviously settle in as a favorite. But I think that actually the line will come down. The closer we get to fight night, I think you're going to see action coming in up ahead. He's a household name. He's dangerous. And people are going to see value next to his name here at the plus odds, which right now you can get him almost as high as a plus 200. So I expect action to come in up ahead. If you want to target Ankalaev, you should wait on this line. And if you want to take Pereira, I would take him now. All right, but I'm looking at this fight to not make it to the final bell this time. I think we see a knockout one way or another, and I like under three rounds. Excuse me, I like under 3 rounds for this fight to end within the first 3 rounds, specifically the second round. Ankalaev puts him out.